All right, let's talk about transparency in Goliad County. If you watched last week's video, you heard me say, the transparency problems that we face here are very easy to explain and even easier for us to fix, right? And I say that because our transparency issues that we face here in Goliad County are not for the reasons that most people would assume, right? What I have found in my research running up to my decision to run for county judge and my research and conversations and deep dives to be prepared should I be elected to be your next county judge is that our transparency issues are rooted in process breakdowns and communication breakdowns, which now we know make a lot of sense because those two things are affecting a lot of aspects of county business. So of course they're affecting transparency, right? So let me tell you what transparency is to me. Transparency is making the facts and the truth available to everyone and then explaining it and pushing it out in a way that everyone can absorb and understand. All right. I'll start with processes on this one aspect, right? And let's use the funds or dollar amounts for that. Several years back, there was a big issue where they found hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bank account, right? And the rhetoric was, well, they're trying to hide it. What are they hiding? Why are they hiding the money? Okay, it wasn't hidden. It just wasn't tracked properly. That's how it was found to begin with. If you're hiding money, you don't hide it in an account that gets audited. It just wasn't being audited properly, right? And how can you be transparent about the amount of money you have if the processes to track it and get that number aren't being done? Okay. And here's the thing, processes are extremely, extremely important in everything that we're doing, right? And in full transparency, I've put out my to-do list or my focuses for 2026, and it's pretty much all in processes. I want to understand every aspect of every process, front to back, start to finish, for every department in Goliad County, right? Because if I'm not in the know and understand how they're doing things, how can I vote as a member of the commissioners court, or how can the commissioners vote if they don't know in the ways that we are leading the county and these departments are going to operate, right? We need to be in the know before you make decisions. Only way to be in the know is to understand the processes, right? So process is something I'm focusing on heavily this year so I understand it, so that the commissioners and I and the entire court can make a decision on how we're going to change things or how we're going to do things to be more efficient in 2027, right? And processes are something that have to be looked at day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, right? Because those things inherently will always change as well. The way we did things in 2005, a lot of them won't work in 2026, right? The way they did things in 1950 definitely didn't work in 2005, right? So processes are one of the things that we will always stay vigilant on and understand, because they'll always need tweaks because things are always going to change and adapt, right? We have to adapt with them, right? Communication, harder aspect to understand, very similar to relationships, right? Now, the process, we have the data because the process worked. Communicating it and pushing it out to people is a harder aspect of it for several reasons. Number one, the process of communicating and getting it out to people, right? And let's start on that one. And I'll stick on the aspect of the budget and money, because that is the most important thing. Everyone should know about where your tax dollars are going, right? The budget's online. That's where I got it from. I printed off the county website. And even on the county website, it was pretty easy to find, right? It's right there, fiscal transparency. Can't make it any easier than that, right? So the county's doing their part as far as having the information available for a lot of things. What we should do a better job on, and what I will focus on, is simplifying that down. I mean, the county budget for last year is that thick. Well, number one, if you're not a numbers person, it's hard for you to understand. It's overwhelming, right? Number two, if you're busy, you don't have time to go line by line on every single page of the 200 something page budget, whatever it is. That's not your job anyway. That's our job, right? So we've already done the information. We've already done the legwork. All we got to do now is condense it down and make it even simpler, right? And to a certain degree, we do that. There is a cover page that breaks down expenses and revenues side by side and that kind of deal. But again, it can be a little confusing if you don't know what's going on, terminology, what's what. We'll simplify it even more. We will make it to its very simplest form. And if we got to put a video out to explain it one time and then send it out with it, then we'll do that. We will do whatever we have to do to ensure that the transparency is available and able for you to understand, right? That's the budget. Let's talk about Commissioner's Court as a whole. People have been asking me why the camera's off. The newspaper asked, are we going to turn the cameras back on, right? And to be fair, I have no idea why the cameras were turned off. There very well could have been a good reason for that. It just wasn't communicated properly. And no one asked. Everyone assumed it was for a reason that it probably wasn't for, right? And here's the deal. I'm guilty. I never asked the question, so that's why I don't know, right? Maybe that information is available and I didn't ask about it, right? They didn't break it down for me. The cameras, if I'm elected, will come back on. Mr. Bruns, I said the same exact thing. Cameras will come back on. I want to go a step further than that. The Commissioner's Court will be live streamed on Facebook, but then we will also upload them on a county YouTube page. That way, if you don't have Facebook, you can still watch Commissioner's Court the next day. Right? We want everyone to have access to what's going on. Right? And then, one step further, we will start making videos for certain thresholds. If Commissioner's Court is over 30 minutes long, we will produce the next day a 2, 3, 4, 5, 10-minute video, depending on how long Commissioner's Court is, to get you the meat and potatoes of what was covered in Commissioner's Court, so that you know what questions to ask or what sections of Commissioner's Court you want to watch, right? Maybe in a Commissioner's Court's 2 hours long, and you watch the 5-minute segment the next day and realize, hey, we talked about the budget. So you fast forward Commissioner's Court to 1 hour and 43 minutes that you wouldn't have known had you not watched all 2 hours Commissioner's Court, but you didn't have 2 hours set aside because life is busy. We'll simplify that, right? Furthermore, we need a communications director at the county. Now, also in full transparency, we can't afford another employee, right? We can't afford someone to be their full-time job. But if our processes are good and our communication is an emphasis, we have an emphasis on communication and pushing things out at the lowest level, that's not very time consuming, right? So we can make that an additional duty or dual hat that with one of the employees we have, whose role it is to make sure we make this video the next day, whose role it is to make the video to where fiscal responsibility and transparency is every quarter, we're going to give you an update on where we stand on our budget and the actual revenue we've spent. We budgeted this amount. Every quarter, we will give you an update on what is happening that quarter so you know where the money actually is in as real time as we know it, right? And every year, we will do a state of the county so that you hear from myself and then the rest of the commissioners, so all the commissioners' courts, so you understand this is the state of the county. This is where we were last year. This is where we are this year. And this is what we're planning for next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, right? If we're doing strategic planning, we'll put that information out too, right? And that all starts with one person whose focus it is to make sure we are being as transparent and our transparency is as simple and down to the lowest levels as possible so that everyone can understand it in as fast as possible, right? A lot to cover on that stuff, right? The last aspect I will cover in terms of transparency is our delivery. We talked about separating personal from business, which is easy to say in practice, but harder to do in reality, right? And a lot of times, people get lost in the truth based on the way it's delivered, right? And that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It can be. What he said made sense, but I couldn't stand the way he said it, so I stopped listening, right? Or what he was saying was the truth, but his delivery was boring and not catching and didn't make sense and it was all over the place, so I stopped listening. So either way, the truth was given to you, but you didn't absorb it, which is kind of what we're covering and everything else, right? So we will make sure that our delivery is as professional and streamlined and grabbing as possible. Right? And a lot of that starts with professionalism, right? That's probably overwhelmingly the bigger issue is that the way things are said, not just what is said, right? And so one good way to break this down is, professional transparency versus political correctness, right? Professional transparency is putting out the truth or the information, the facts, the details in a respectful way to where you're understanding it, you're taking it, and you know, but this is the truth, right? Political correctness is only saying aspects or not saying other aspects, hiding behind something because it affects you personally or it affects your aspect of political career or your department and all that kind of stuff, right? Just because something will hurt you doesn't mean you shouldn't say it, right? Doesn't make it less the truth. You're just not putting the truth out there, right? And so let me put this in the most transparent way I can to you. I don't give a shit about political correctness, right? And I'm getting that a lot as I'm campaigning and going out. People are coming to me and they're like, listen, you really shouldn't talk about this because it'll turn people off, give people the bad opinion, all that kind of stuff. But it's not the truth. And I am not going out and telling people things just to get elected. I'm not saying things just to get elected, right? And if I am elected, I'm not just going to do things to get reelected, right? I've got no ambitions of being a politician, right? I have concerns about where we are moving forward and where the county is in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I have developed over many years the skill sets to be a part of the solution for those things. So to me, if I don't step up and use those skill sets to help solve the problem when I knew the problem was coming, then I am just as much at fault as the people that caused the problem. All right. And I want to be transparent about that, right? I am not here just to be your county judge. I am not running to be a politician. I don't want to take this and jumpstart. Now, next thing I want to be is the governor and the president. No, why I'm doing this is to help my community, because I live here. This is my home. This is where my kids are raised. That's what matters the most. That's what matters the most to me, right? There's a lot of issues, and I think it's important that people know every single issue that we have and why it's going to become a bigger issue and what it will become if we don't solve it, right? But I also have to present the problems to you in the most professional, respectful way as I can, because that's what's good for business. And that's what ensures that everyone understands and absorbs that information in, right? People are telling me things, again, don't say this, do say this, talk about this, talk about that. That's not professional, right? And professionalism is going to be something like processes that we are going to push and hammer and hold accountable on everything that we do, not just transparency, right? Because those things bleed over into everything else, right? I talk about the Army a lot because overwhelmingly made me the man I am today. I would be half of what I am today without the skills and what the Army made me into, right? But I'm a sergeant. I've always had soldiers. Well, one day my soldiers, and have been, my soldiers become leaders. Well, they're going to be the kind of leader that I set the example of and that they saw in their leader, right? My boys are going to be the father and the husband they see me be every single day. My daughter is going to interact with her husband the way that she sees my wife and I interact every single day. My employees are going to act the way that their bosses act. The departments in the county are going to act the way that the commissioner's court acts. They're taking the lead. Everybody watches and takes the lead from the next person in the rung. That's just the way that life is, right? So professionalism needs to be an aspect of focus and paramount in everything that we do. Transparency is no different, right? Because the way you present things and the respect level you give, the way the business professional presentation of it is what catches your eye and keeps you focused and makes you understand. So if we're not doing that, we could have the processes and have all the information. We could have it available to communicate. But if our delivery method isn't in a way that you can understand or want to hear, then there's a breakdown in it, right? All those things work together, all right? Just like relationships, transparency is such an easy thing to solve, right? I use the metaphor low-hanging fruit. It's not low-hanging fruit. It's literally on the ground. All we got to do is pick it up, right? Transparency, we're already doing it. We just need to break it down and solve it and take it down to the lowest level so that everybody can grasp it and everybody can understand it. One day, this is an overnight fix. All right. Just like everything else that I'm saying, let's do it. Let's do it together. All right. Look forward to seeing everybody. I got some putting out some meet and greets that we're trying to do, set up in different areas, trying to get to all the communities. I am starting to knock on doors again. If I don't make it to everybody, I apologize on that. I really am trying, but I'm knocking on doors and going out when people are going to be home. I don't want to go leave a flyer on your door because we're at work. I'm trying to go out when everyone's there, right? My phone number is available. I'm putting on everything that we put. Call me. I actually took 6 or 7 calls last week, which I was extremely happy about. I'm literally stepping out of meetings to take phone calls because that's how important it is to me. And I want to be available to everybody whenever they need something, right? That's, again, that is the cost of leadership, is to be available, right? So just like to make a good relationship is being out, being seen, being talked to, being known, being available. It's the same thing on transparency, right? All this stuff runs hand in hand, right? If I'm out and you see me at the fair and the rodeo and we talk to me and I can answer and explain some of the things that are going on, that's all we got to do. Give you the opportunity to be as transparent as possible. Transparency will not be an issue for us, and we will work harder to make transparency even easier for you to understand. All right. I look forward to seeing everybody in the coming weeks. Again, call me. Thank you very much.